What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Normal America Show. Apologize, excuse me, for my crackly voice. I was up late last night. And then what's even worse is I did the stream last night. I was up way later and I should have been arguing with a moron. And then I couldn't sleep because my back's killing me. So I didn't really get much sleep at all. And so I was taking a nap. And then my wife was like, hey, I think they reached a verdict in the Trump case. So I was like, oh, I got up. And of course, as soon as I looked, it was like guilty, as predicted. I put it at 85% chance of guilty, 15 at hung jury, because I thought there might be one holdout. But I overarchingly knew that it was going to be a guilty verdict. And so I did a little TikTok video and then decided I'll come stream a little early. Strike while the iron's hot. People have to hear Rob's opinion on this. It's no surprise. We talked about this before, how sometimes stories will break and people in my audience and people like me and people that sort of follow the same information that I do will say, that's not new information. We've known that forever. Such as the Twitter files. There was a lot in the Twitter files that people are like, we already knew this. But what was unique about it was that it was then shown in such a definitive way that even normies would be able to see. Even the normal person could, oh, okay. So it's one thing to have Alex Jones say, I've seen papers that show that the military and the FBI and CISA was working with social media to censor posts. Like, that's one thing. But then when you have actual, and I'm not discrediting Alex Jones at all. I like Alex Jones. But then when you have actual reporters release that information in a thorough investigation, it's sort of a different thing. That's what today represents. Today represents, I hope, the clearest example and the most brazen example of what I've been talking about in politics my whole adult life, but certainly since I've been live streaming. To the point where it's boring to hear me say this now. I'm a single issue voter. That issue is corruption. That is the most important issue, because if you don't have a voice and if unelected bureaucrats and institutions working in tandem can corruptly destroy our country and your voice and pick and choose the candidates, then we don't really have a country. Right? That's what I've said over and over and over and over and over again. Now, my audience I can't criticize very much, but the Republicans I deal with, particularly at the state level, they look at me like, oh, that Rob, sure, corruption. Sure. Maybe old Joe, we'll see. Sure. Well, here we are. Now, what the left has going for them, the corrupt institutions, the establishment, what they have going for them is they kept cameras out of the court. And we talked about this yesterday as well, the effect that has. By keeping cameras there, in effect keeping cameras out of there, in effect what happens is this. Oftentimes, if you go to the direct source material, you'll find stuff that maybe even people that you really like that were reporting on it didn't catch or didn't think was a big point. And you yourself as an individual might say, oh, wow, that's a big deal to me. I didn't hear Rob say that. I didn't hear Tucker say that. I didn't hear DeSantis say that. But here I am reading this. I think it's a big deal. I do that all the time. Glad to hear I'm dealing with it well. Dealing with what well? Don't pick on Wick's appearance. For God's sakes, we start picking on people's appearance. I won't get to talk about politics. I'll just have to defend my grotesque ass for... okay. I think Wick's a fine human being. Anywho. MAGA tears imminent, Keck. We'll talk about the left's reaction list, of course. So because they didn't have cameras in there, what that allows people to do is whoever controls the narrative wins, because the individual person has no way of reading. They're just going to listen to people. We talked yesterday, I was even talking to Sparky about how sort of the people on our side are not good at winning that public narrative. And, partially because the scale's so tilted, all of these establishment institutions are so on board. So your mainstream media, your social media, every place except X, which is why they hate Elon Musk and they'll go after him. Yeah, Sparky, that's a good way of putting it. It's like any other day, just more transparent. Chewbacca Games, would you like to call in? You're talking about people's pathetic speeches, so surely you're a bold and brave person and you would like to call in, right? You could tell us all about this trial and why you know he was guilty, right? You could give what won't be a pathetic little speech, right? So we're unable then to see with our own eyes, and we have to rely on what other people say. And the establishment is betting that because they'll have all their CNN talking heads and their MSNBC and the New York Times, and, Robert De Niro will be out there saying, already bested me in a debate and then I banned you. Well, shit, no kidding. I bet I could prove you wrong. Well, you're talking to me right now, so I guess you're not banned.
It might be a done deal. All they really need is one more hit on Flynn. They really need is one more.
Unban you, big fella. You're talking right now. I'll tell you what I could do for you, though. If you're too cowardly to call in, I can make your dreams come true. So they'll sit out there and they control the narrative, and the left's reaction is going to be exactly what you see. I already saw Pisco put up his little dancing Snoopy emoji that he always puts in. And you'll see people like, yeah, he's guilty, we know, bro. Let's do your tears. No tears here. I told everyone Donald Trump was my third choice for president, for candidate, I guess, for the Republican Party. The best thing that could happen for my worldview is to literally take Trump right now, put him up against the wall, and execute him via firing squad. That would be the best thing for my worldview, because it would inspire such a counter uprising of people that would never vote for Democrats again. That would be fine to me. Trump going to prison does not negatively affect my life in any way, shape, or form. I have work tomorrow, or would stay Thursday. I have work Saturday. I'll be there at 10 a.m. My life will continue apace. It doesn't matter. I don't like everything Donald Trump does. I criticize him often. I think the best thing he could have done would have been to not run for office again in 2024 and instead endorse someone like Ron DeSantis or Vivek. To me, that would have been the best thing. I get tired of having to talk about some of the dumb things that Trump says, some of the dumb things he says. We're going to build the FBI, great new building. There's a litany of things all throughout his presidency, his campaign, the past 4 years, that I don't like about Trump. I talk about it quite frequently in this show. My concern has always been a two-tier justice system that uses lawfare and uses our institutions, such as the intelligence agencies, in order to put their thumb on the scale and make sure that there are people that are elected that don't really care about the average person. And the people on the left, like Chewbacca, I'm assuming here, doesn't give a shit about that, because what they accuse me of like, oh, your tears because Trump's going down. I don't really give a shit, right? Good content for me, I guess. I told you so's all around. I was right. It's because their entire political worldview is based on Trump. They hate him. They don't care. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about fairness. They don't care about the legal system. None of that matters. Burn it all down. Orange man bad. That's it. Don't commit crimes you have nothing to worry about. These were the same people. By the way, it's ironic that these are left-wingers and Democrats. They're the same people that said that about the Patriot Act. The government wants to spy on you? Well, if you don't have anything to hide, you shouldn't mind. It's the same thing. They can't defend this. They know that Hillary did worse. They know that. This exact crime, Hillary did worse. They don't care. They're just like, whatever, don't do the crime, dude. So they'll cheer this on, and that's fine. I don't care. The truth is, most of these people aren't happy people. You've seen the online left. You see who they are. You see them in college campuses. You see Robert De Niro. You see those people. You see what the left is. You see what these establishment bootlickers are. They're not happy people. This is their happiness. When I have a moment, like we took my son today to this little like farm. It's like a little mini zoo. We take him all the time. It's here in the big state forest near us. And we took him. And when I see my son walk up to the first baby goat and he goes, "Oh, I missed you," and he hands my cracker, that gives me this feeling. Like as a father, I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Those moments are moments that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Like those moments like that. It's an amazing feeling. They don't have that. These people don't have that. They don't know what that's like. They don't have, they're hollow people. All they know is that their life is shit. And so they have taken the persona and the identity of my life revolves around Donald Trump and I want to see him taken down. And so this is their moment. Your moment when you walk your daughter down the aisle, when you met your wife, when your child was born, right? Your proudest moment, a moment you had with your parents, where they were proud of you. Those moments in life, those keystone moments that build like a healthy person that you could look back when you're on your deathbed and say, that's what my life was. They don't have those. They have, remember when Trump was found guilty? That's their dopamine rush. Thanks for super chat, David. $5 says lefties out in full force in the chat rooms. Not going to be happy when Trump gets elected in November. Yeah, I saw that, Ross. He was found guilty in all the accounts. Now, of course, not all left-wingers are like that, but the ones you see that are in chat rooms right now, like, yes, that's who they are. And you can see it. Oftentimes when I'm on the panels, I say it all the time, you can see when you're on these panels with these left-wingers. You can see. I have left-wing friends right now. They're not on Twitter like, yes, found guilty. They're not. But these people, that's who they are. There's certainly a lot of left-wingers that actually criticize this trial. Even some of them have been on CNN. So, the idea, it was the same when there was a loss in 2020. Like, you have to understand, from my perspective, everyone in my life politically at the national level that I ever wanted to have won has lost, with the exception of the 2016 election. Every election is me losing. Every single time. Every single time. So the idea that you're going to come on here and be like, oh yeah, your tears today. There are no tears. It's my expectation. I expect that this country will slip further and further into tyranny. Even if Trump wins in 2024, he ain't going to do shit. He ain't going to do nothing about it. Trump gets sentenced July 11th. They'll probably try to sentence him to some jail time. So coming on here and being like, oh, yeah, your tears. I don't mind it. It's absolutely fine. I have no problem with it. Rights above all. Come on, man. Get over it. If this was a black man, you wouldn't care about injustice. Now it's a wealthy white man you love, and then suddenly the justice system sucks. Yep, that's it. Yep, if it was a black man, I wouldn't care. That's true. That's absolutely true, because I'm racist, right? Can you point to me examples of that, of my racism? Go ahead. Just curious. Let's see, I've done show after show arguing with people, including on the right, about how our prison system is absurd, and the fact that rape is so prominent is disgusting. But I guess I just meant for white people, right? That's what I meant. Is that it? Huh. I didn't say you're racist. I don't believe you are. I mean, the black system's been saying this stuff for decades, and suburban whites didn't care. That's your opinion of what went on. There were plenty of suburban whites that cared. In fact, there was a lot of suburban left-wing whites that wanted them all released on bail reform, which led to people in the black community having criminals that were put in their neighborhoods. And so murders, rapes, robberies, etc. increased. But you didn't give a shit about that, right? You didn't care about that. You don't care. You don't actually care about black victims. You only care about black criminals because you're racist, because you hate black people, right? You're okay. You were probably okay with Black Lives Matter burning down black cities, and you're okay with black criminals being left out in the street to kill black people. As long as they're black criminals, you say that's fine. Screw the kids that are killed in gangland shootout. You don't give a shit about those people, right? Because you're racist, because you don't like black people. You're probably white yourself, or you're one of those Uncle Ruckus self-loathing blacks. Is what you are. You didn't give a shit about that. You don't speak up about them. No, I agree. You hate black people. I know you know I don't. I agree. Yeah. You hate black people. You're racist towards black people. And you probably get off every time you hear of another gangland shooting in D.C., Chicago, right? You like that, right? Taking out those people of color that you really don't think deserve to be here. That's what you like, right? That's a shame. I got to say, I really don't like racist in my chat. So if you take it a little easy, right? Sit on there, David Duke. We'll talk about the trial here. Yeah, July 11th is the sentencing. Is it going to change the election? I don't think. There are people saying it will help Trump. It should, but it probably won't. To answer your question right above all, let me answer Kennedy Ivan's question, then I'll respond to you in a serious manner. I just hate when people imply I'm racist or some shit. You have a serious point to make that's like, well, hasn't the justice system always been uneven? There's a serious point to be made there. I think the racial aspect coming at me is kind of nonsensical. So anyways, will it change the election? I think this case is so ridiculous that going to jail might help Trump somewhat because hopefully there's enough pushback at how ridiculous this case is. But I don't know that it'll change the election because if he had been found not guilty, I think that would have accomplished the same thing. So the fact that it happened, that this trial even happened, probably ends up, I would guess, helping Trump. But him being found guilty or not guilty, I don't know. Because him being found guilty, I think, will wake enough of his base up to encourage people to go out and show enough independent type people that like, wow, this is so corrupt that they might decide that they're going to vote for Trump even though they don't like him. Whereas if he was found not guilty, I think there are a lot of independent people who would say, wow, look how corrupt this was. They had this unprecedented trial and for what? So the idea that the justice system's always been uneven, that's true. So there is no justice system in the world that will be equal, right? There is always, our justice systems, in theory, based on English common law, is set up to be, I think, one of the best, which is prioritizing the rights of the defendant. Guilty until beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And so that's the idea. You would rather, famously, one of the founding fathers said that you would rather 100 guilty men walk free than one innocent man be jailed. That's sort of the foundational belief in our legal system. Does it work out that way? No, for many reasons. There are claims on race. I'm not sure how much those are true. I think it more has to do with geographic location. If you're in an area that's rife with high crime, you're probably more likely to get stricter sentencing. For example, I've had this debate many times with people that talk about racial discrepancies in sentencing and everything like that. Did you know there's a group that's discrepancies against them are far worse than black to white in every single way? Likelihood to be arrested, likelihood to have interactions with police, likelihood to be convicted, likelihood to have a longer sentence. So if you say, well, blacks are like 5% or 10% more likely than whites to have all of those increased, did you know that those numbers are astronomically higher between men and women? So does that mean that we have a bigoted system against men, a bigoted law enforcement system against men? And as soon as you bring this up, people will start saying things like this. Well, but isn't it true that men commit more crimes? Are men more predisposed to violence? Okay, now do black and white. Now, I don't think it's a racial thing why those numbers go that way, but it has to do with the situation. More blacks in poverty in high crime areas, which makes it more likelihood to be involved in the criminal world, etc. Regardless, it's undoubtable that there's inequities in our lawfare system, and there's certainly times that it's corrupt, even when it comes to non-political figures. But you're an absolute buffoon if you're comparing that to this. What this is a completely unprecedented action in our country. This is the Soviet Union. This is taking a sham trial and locking up the opposition, a former president and the frontrunner for president of the next election. This is the culmination of everything I've talked about on my channel for 6 years, which is we have a corrupt system that does not want potential outsiders. That same, if you're concerned primarily with black people, that same corrupt system has intentionally kept black people subservient and impoverished and in high crime areas for decades. That same system today is jailing the frontrunner for president because they view him as a potential outsider. Any chance there is to have to improve the livelihoods, to improve the lawfare system against black people as you would see it, any chance there would be to have a just system becomes far more diminished when they are so brazen that they are for no reason in a sham trial locking up someone that they view as a potential outsider. This ensures that no one outside their club will become a president or a mainstream powerful politician for decades to come. That means any hope that you think that someone's going to rise up and achieve justice for black people is laughable. It won't happen because they have sent the signal that anyone that would actually do anything that is against what they want done will be treated as harshly as Donald Trump, if not worse. And so for people to make light of it and go, oh, who cares? It's just some rich white man. I don't give a shit about Donald Trump as a person, as far as him, the individual, going to jail. I've said since 2016, if he broke a law, fine, send him to jail. What I care about is the two-tier system. If they are so brazenly going to do everything possible to make sure that there can't be an outsider to that system, that means the chance of changing that system in significant ways. And there are communities all across this country that would say, yes, I don't feel the system's working for me. Those may include inner city communities that you see currently furious because they're living in poverty. Meanwhile, illegal immigrants are being bussed into their towns and given fat checks while we send checks to Ukraine. Or it could be my community of rural Pennsylvania, where jobs have left over and over again. COVID lockdowns devastated us. It's becoming poorer and poorer every year. And not only does no one give a shit, unlike the inner city community, which people at least pay lip service to and say, oh, these poor people. We're told that we're the evil white men that must be attacked. We're the problem with this country. Every institution in the country hates us, constantly demonizes us for our skin color, for our values. We cling to our guns and Bibles. There is no chance of that changing politically if they can lock up anyone who would be a potential outsider. That means anyone that comes up through my community and decides to run for president, or through your community in the inner city that actually could make a change, is not going to win, and the people that do come up through there are going to be people that are just bullshitting you and won't actually make a difference. Okay, rights above all, you say Trump's actions are unprecedented. Care to call in and defend that statement? Care to call in? What's unprecedented about what Donald Trump here? Donald Trump was found guilty of falsifying business records to cover up an underlying crime. Okay, you say that's unprecedented. That's never happened. Okay. That's your argument. Everybody hear that? So this guy says it's unprecedented that someone's falsified business records. Yeah, he prefers to be a coward. So, but rights above all, I will say I appreciate your honesty. And, you know, you come in, you basically allude to the fact that I'm racist. You then make a bold statement that this is unprecedented. I ask if you want to call in. You come in, no. You basically, and you admit that you're a coward. So I appreciate you admitting to your vice, though. I do appreciate that. If one of my muds here, if you could ban him, though. So go ahead and give him a ban. Just like you admit to being a coward, I'll admit to being petty. See you later. Thanks. Go call someone else racist. I'm not a coward. I'm just petty. So, see ya. But I did call you a coward, too. Let's see. Pondering got in touch with me. Flousney. And you can see how these people, you can see how they cheered on. Now, this is why I said, I talked to Sparky last night. I won't sacrifice my principles and values, right? So I'm not going to do something like, I have no choice but to give you my authentic take and my honest take. Doesn't mean that it's always right. I am a competitive asshole. And so, there's part of me that always wants to win any debate that I'm in. That's true. But I am telling the truth, even if I'm wrong. And I am wrong at times. And I try to admit when I'm wrong. That's certainly true. So I will never... I'm not going to cheer for shit that the left would cheer. I'm not going to cheer that, people that I've debated online get locked up or that some bad shit happens in their life. I truly mean that. I don't want their marriage to fall apart. I don't want them to get ill. That's just not who I am. I can't help it. Maybe that means I'm not as effective as I could, but that's the truth. So like last night, there were several issues I was saying, here's issues I think the right's going wrong. I thought Julie Kelly was wrong on this operating procedure in the warrant of Mar-a-Lago. I thought she was wrong on that and not that she was wrong, but that her interpretation and the extrapolation that people were taking was wrong on that. I was honest about it. I was honest. The libertarian candidate, who I think sucks, I was honest about some of the criticisms that were coming his way. I was like, well, I don't know. I don't share those particular criticisms of him. That's just who I am. And, I'm not going to cheer for cancel culture, even though there are people that have called for me or would be happy for me to be kicked off these platforms. I'm not really doing that. But what I've said, and I admit it, is I'm not going to defend these people. I'm not. Yeah, I have a Discord. Let me see. I don't have it open right now. I guess that would help if I'm telling people to call in. So I don't care, right? So it's the game is so tired with these people. Someone like Pisco or Pondering Politics, right? It's so tiresome. For example, Pondering, I saw saying that Alito and Thomas should recuse themselves because supposedly their wives did stuff. Alito's wife flew a flag up, the same flag that's been flying outside San Francisco's courthouse. And Thomas's wife said something. So they should be, but he didn't have shit all to say when Ruth Bader Ginsburg, not her husband, not her spouse, not her family member, her herself, didn't do something symbolic like hang up a flag, literally went to the media and talked about how much she hated Trump. And then ruled on cases brought by Trump's DOJ. Didn't have anything to say about that when it occurred. Oh, I must have missed that. They'll talk about Judge Cannon being biased and need to be recused, but not Judge Merchant. They didn't have a problem when FBI agents on the task force to go after Trump for Russia collusion were talking about insurance policies. No problem. And so now when you see them saying, yeah, Trump found guilty in this obvious sham case, remember, if Trump would happen to win, small chance, and if he would happen to actually go after the people that were criminals against him, even smaller chance, they would, you want to see tears. It wouldn't be like me here now. They'd literally be, oh my God, it's the end of the, oh no. That's who they would be. We all know it. They don't give a shit. This Flousty guy, he's telling me, he's like, look, I'll sum it up. It wasn't even about the Trump stuff. This is what he says on X. He's like, oh, I'm not voting for Trump because he's a threat to democracy because he wouldn't concede. And before you even say, so did Hillary, oh, you know that that's different, man. You're smart enough to know that's different. You're right. I am smart enough to know that's different. Hillary said, I concede, then worked with a Russian spy to spread disinformation to spy on a president, to get a FISA warrant on a president for the first time in history. That's what Hillary's team did. Trump said, I'm not going to concede. I thought this was stolen. But then he did leave power peacefully without using his agencies to spy on his opponents. Oh, thanks, Courtney. I appreciate it. Yeah. If they lose, they'll riot. Not maybe pondering it, but that's what the Democrats will do. They know it. I know it. You know it. They know it. Everybody knows it. We know. The truth is, this is what they always wanted. The truth is, as I've said so many times, they have bought the establishment line, hook, line, and sinker. Trump is evil Hitler, and therefore, anything is justified in taking him down. By the way, just curious, if they're willing to celebrate and do this trial to Trump right here, you think they would have been willing to, I don't know, change a few ballots? You think? Just a thought. What do I expect Trump to do, someone says. Yeah, Trump conceded. He left. If he didn't concede, he wouldn't have left. He left. They didn't drag him out. Is there good Hitler somewhere? Didn't you see that Rick and Morty where you combine Hitler with Lincoln? I expect there's two ways Trump could handle this. He'll probably be a little tilted. I imagine that he'll come up. He should have. If I'm his team, from day one, I'm like, dude, they're going to find you guilty. Like, so we need to plan right now for how you're going to act. And the way I would tell Trump to act is to come out and be like, this is an attack on me. It's an attack on our country. I was seen as a potential outsider. This should worry every one of you, regardless if you're left-wing, right-wing, Republican, or Democrat. This sets the signal that our country has crossed a Rubicon. We are now the Soviet Union. Show trials will now take place to anyone who stands in opposition to the establishment orthodoxy. Right now, they're coming after me because I'm the biggest stumbling block. But after they get rid of people like me, then it'll be the next tier. Influencers, media personalities, academics, entertainers. And it'll go down the list until they're coming to you because you went to a school board meeting, or you posted a meme online that they didn't like, or you posted facts about vaccines online that they didn't like. And eventually, they will come for anyone that they think is a threat to their power. And if we don't step up now and stop this, it will be too late. We will go down the route of the Soviet Union. There's Tom Kennedy. There's my Democrat friend, Tom Kennedy. Let's talk about Tom Kennedy for a minute. Thanks so much, Tom, for being here. I really appreciate it. Tom's the type of person that told me, he texted me the day that we found out that Joe Biden had classified info in his house, and he said, well, that's it. That's the end of the trial against Trump. They can't go after him. I laughed in his face. I've asked Tom multiple times since then, hey, Tom, turns out you were wrong and I was right. How do you square that? Now, Tom's still going to vote for Joe Biden. And Tom's a reasonable Democrat. That's a reasonable Democrat right there. A reasonable Democrat. Tom's also a person that can see just how insane the left's becoming. I've had many conversations about it. He's still going to vote Democrat. He still will. And that's why Tom's actually more responsible. People, not him individually, but people like him, are actually more responsible for this than actually the crazy blue-haired people you see at college campuses. Because Tom will continue to vote for that party despite the corruption over and over again until they put him in handcuffs. And then he'll say, oh, geez. And I'll say, that's a shame, Tom. For example, Tom and I have had this conversation. He knows that I stand at risk to losing my job and that I stand at risk of not being hired many places, particularly universities, because that's what I got my degree to do, because of my political position. Tom also understands that his political position would mean that he's not at risk whatsoever. Now, imagine that you're Tom and you see this, and you see this corrupt trial play out, right? And you see that we've crossed this Rubicon and we're actually at a place that literally is Soviet era. And your first comment is, yeah, but Trump said lock her up. Hey, good work, Tom, man. You did it. There's reasonable. That's the guy who ran my campaign right there, Tom Kennedy. He's a reasonable guy, smart guy. That's him. That's what he came in and said. So there you go. You expect him to say, fuck, what a bad day for our country. No. So that's Tom. Good work, Tom. We can still watch monkey movies together. All right, so what about the fact that Trump said lock her up? Yes, Trump said lock her up. Trump says a lot of things, but saying it is one thing, doing it is another thing. Saying that someone should be locked up because you feel that they committed a crime when you're running for office and saying that is completely legitimate. People say that all the time. There is a litany of people that ran on the promise of locking up Donald Trump, right? Now, if you're a prosecutor who has the ability to make that come out, that's probably a bad thing that you were able to do that. But if you're a politician, for example, if Ilhan Omar runs in her district and says, I'm going to run on, I think Trump committed treason, he should be locked up. That's fine. The problem is if you're abusing your power in order to achieve that sort of thing. So did Donald Trump do anything that was an abuse of power to get his FBI to lock up Hillary Clinton? No, he didn't, did he? In fact, he did the exact opposite. He stood down while his FBI actively went after him and sabotaged him over and over again, including in criminal ways, while he desperately tried to argue against it and beg people like James Comey to just be honest with the American people that he wasn't a target of the investigation. He didn't do anything sending them after Hillary Clinton or anything like that. So the idea that it's somehow comparable that Trump said lock her up to we have Joe Biden's team giving a press conference and a campaign conference outside the courthouse while they have this show trial that is one of the most rigged trials that we've seen in the history of this country, that is blatant for a crime that was more blatantly committed by Hillary Clinton that they left off the hook with a slap on the wrist, that they worked with Michael Cohen, who admitted to committing worse crimes that Bragg decided to let off the hook, that Senate superstar Goldman, who's a Democrat that's involved in all these impeachments against Trump, actually coached Cohen on what to say, that Cohen lied under oath several times, that the judge's daughter is personally being paid by the people involved, that the judge itself has exhibited over and over and over again his bias towards the prosecution in unfair ways, including allowing salacious details about Stormy Daniels if condoms were worn or not, while not allowing Trump's team to bring expert witnesses to say that the underlying crime was never committed, to explain what campaign finance violations are. Well, all that's occurring, and Democrats are cheering on that he was arrested. You want to know how that's different than Trump saying lock her up? That's your argument? No, it doesn't set a standard, blazing fool. It only sets the standard that's set is if you're an outsider, you could be taken down with lawfare. Do you actually expect that some Republican AG is gonna go after Biden? You think that's gonna happen? This is my favorite argument. I've heard people make this argument. Well, that's it. Now Republicans will do the same. Shit! Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, Bob Menendez is getting gold bars from Egypt and he's still on the Intel committee. Shit, man. Whoo! Oh, man. Good stuff. Whew. Precedent's been set. Now they'll get him. Now it's on. Young aren't tired of the shit. Tom's young. He's still voting Democrat. Hey, Tom, who are you voting for? They're not tired of the shit. They don't care. They'll move on to the next thing. You know what? I'm tired of COVID lockdowns. Been following the news on that lately? How corrupt that is? How many young people give a shit? But why is that the point you're making, Tom? It doesn't undermine Trump. Okay, it undermines it in the sense that it would be, I don't even know how to explain this. This would be like if a football coach says, a football coach sends 12 men on the field intentionally and gets away with it. And then the next day, a scandal breaks out and their opponents are found to have all been doing steroids. And he says, that's unfair. That's ridiculous. Someone look into this and Tom would go, well, it undermines his voice because he intentionally sent 12 people to the field. So cheating's cheating. No, it doesn't undermine his voice. Technically, what you're saying is technically true. Had he never said lock her up, would he have more efficacy to say they're using lawfare to get me? Yes, 1% more. He would have 1% more. So I guess if your point is you want to argue that 1%, that's fine. On a day where we're becoming the Soviet Union. And that's great. Good argument, I guess. Great. Alrighty. I've said from the get-go, they're not going to, can we, I don't mind people talking about what we should do. Can we dispense of this immediately? There is a 0.0000000% chance that this results in indicting former presidents that we've already had for war crimes. Everybody understand? Can we just nip that in the bud right now? I don't mind you saying that they should do that, but you understand that's not happening at all. It's not happening. You get that, right? That's not happening. Period. I don't know if he'll go to jail or not. I'll have to think about it more. They'll send him to jail. I'll say this. Merchant will send him to jail if they think that benefits the Democrats politically. If they think that will hurt them more than it benefits them. Probably if Trump's in jail and can't talk. Let's be honest. If we're honest about Trump, I'm joking. Well, I'm not really joking. I'm kind of ribbing my friend Tom here. But one of the things Tom's alluding to, which is true, is Trump's many times his own worst enemy. If he goes to jail, I think he'll get a bump from people that think that it's outrageous that they're doing it. But the best benefit of Trump would be if he's in jail that he can't talk. That you won't see him saying dumb shit every day. And if he just remains silent, he'll probably win unless they replace Biden. So one of the things that occurred, like you saw, was they assumed, the establishment assumed, and the Democratic media assumed, that when this trial started, because Trump had to be there every day, that like, oh, this will hurt him in his campaign. But actually his numbers went up, and one of the things they started to talk about is like, wow, when he's not out there saying dumb shit, it actually seems like he's benefiting him. So if they had the balls to send him in jail, I don't know. Yeah, Aftershock gets it. Strongly worded letter from Lindsey Graham incoming. You think Trump gets conjugal visits? I mean, say what you will. I'm not for adultery or anything like that. But if Trump goes to jail and gets conjugal visits, he's got to request Stormy Daniels, right? I mean, at that point, it's just, the meme would be too good. I think that'd be the direction to go. Another thing that this says is you have to understand the reason that I'm so black-pilled, and this gets to something Aircraft Sparky was saying yesterday, and it gets to why I'm not going to win. And when I say I'm not going to win, I mean I'm not going to win in two ways. I mean, ultimately, what I want to have happen in this country politically for the foreseeable future, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to continue to take fat L after fat L. That's just true, right? That's the way it goes. But I'm also not going to win within my own ideological group. I'm going to be pushed aside, politely, but still, because what comes next are people that will not be as reasonable as me. That's what comes next. What comes next is right-wingers that say, we're going to do the same shit the left does to us. You want to indoctrinate children in school? We're going to indoctrinate children in school. You want to use lawfare to come after us? No, they're not going to go after presidents and shit like that. That's not going to happen. But it'll happen at the local level. You want to cancel us? We're going to cancel you. You want to say that we're depersoned? We're going to deperson you. That's what's going to happen. And I'll say, no, I don't think it should go that way. But I'll lose. And the reason I'll lose is because I know that no matter how articulate I am a failure. And people like me are failures. We have lost. We've lost. And you know how I know I've lost? I'll give you the number one reason I know I lost. One of my best friends in the world is a guy by the name of Tom Kennedy. Tom Kennedy is a smart man. Tom Kennedy saw what just happened, and he came in here, and the first thing he said was, well, how do you square that with Trump saying lock her up? I have no chance. None. If I can't convince him, that's it. Now, Tom, like I said, we've had discussions about how he knows because of my political beliefs, I could lose jobs and stuff like that. And I'm going to feel terrible that what's going to happen is I'm going to lose, but I've already faced the brunt of like what the left, how they treat me. I know what that's like. Tom hasn't. And there's millions of people like Tom that are centrist left-wingers that hate Trump, and they're like, yeah, this kind of looks a little bad. Whatever, I'm still voting for Biden. And they saw the writing on the wall, but they didn't give a shit because Orange Man bad, so they're the ones that are fucked. It's going to be people like him. He'll get his job replaced by a handicapped woman of color. He'll have right-wingers that say, fuck you, don't come crying to us. We're glad. We hope you live in poverty. We don't give a fuck. We hope your bank kicks you out. That's what'll happen. And I'll just say, that's a shame. Anyways. Sorry. You come sleep on my couch, man. That's what's going to happen. There will be no middle ground. There will not be room for friendly disagreements. It's not going to be that way anymore. That's the world I want. The world I want is where we can have political disagreements and still be friends. That's going to be gone. Because the lesson that the establishment running through the left has taught us is you'll lose over and over if you do that. You'll continue to lose over and over and over. We're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. That's the lesson. And so it's not going to be me. It's going to be the Christian nationalist. It's going to be people that are more ideologically like the Groypers. That's going to be the groups that start to rise up. I don't know the Groypers specifically, but it'll be people that the center left's going to be like, oh, this is scary. Yeah, sorry. I tried to moderate things. I tried to rein in the corruption. You didn't want to hear it. Orange Man bad. That's what you said. Yeah, it looks corrupt, but Orange Man bad. Okay. I feel bad about it, but So, that'll be that. Just like the Jewish people on campuses, or the donators to Ivy League campuses that were Jewish. No problem with the demonization of white people over and over. They joined in on it. Yeah, we'll finance that. But then all of a sudden they were called white. And they were demonized and they're like, oh. Sorry. The radicals on the left had no problem when the cops were cracking down on right-wing protesters. None. Then cops come into their little campus protest. Oh my God. I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for either. Tough shit, I guess. I'm not cheering for it. I don't want it to happen to those groups, but that's what they want to happen to me. So I'm going to step back. Let's see what people are saying on X. We got any? So I guess I'm scheduled for a debate on this next Wednesday, which Pisco says, fantastic day for rule of law and justice. Now, of course, when it's overruled, Pisco say, well, I disagree with that court. It's a bad day. Just like he said the Colorado keeping Trump off the ballot. That was a slam dunk case. Then it was overruled a 9-0 in the Supreme Court. Now the lefties won't call in. They know better. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to respond. Pisco, he says it's fascist that Matt Walsh said Donald Trump should make and publish a list of the 10 high-ranking Democrat criminals who will have arrested when he takes office. First on the list should be Joe Biden. Second should be Joe Biden's crackhead son. And Pisco says, mask off for all the fascist conservative commentators. The mask was never on. He also says this is a remarkable day for justice. So just to be clear, Pisco says what a great day for justice that this sham trial happened on a prosecutor who ran on the promise of taking down Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump runs on the promise of I will go after these 10 Democrats, he says that's fascism. You see? And then he says mask off moment. No, Trump could still run for president. You see, they always accuse you of what they are. Paul Sperry says that he won't be jailed until the appeals process is over, which will be after the election. Someone said even Destiny's saying this is BS. That's not true. Destiny is gaslighting people is what he's doing. And actually, Destiny's pretty good at this. It amazes me how easy it works. Like, he'll say, I'm being paid by Israel, and everyone's like, so here was Destiny's post. Trump's convictions are BS. He's being treated worse than any candidate in history. Patriotic Americans need to realize that the system is working against us, not for us. I don't know about you guys, but I'm protesting by not voting this election. It's going to be rigged anyone's. You see, he's being facetious, trying to tell people not to vote. He, like all the other lefties, are happy. They don't know the details of this trial. They don't give a shit. Let me see here. Look at that. I wonder if Tom's still... I should leave it alone. Someone clip this. I would like to keep this for my friend Tom. I would text him it, but I should probably leave Sleeping Dogs lie. I can't wait 5 years from now when the tit for tat, like, shit gets crazy, when this shit gets even worse, the lawfare. And I text Tom and go, hey, Tom, remember when the day you realized this was going to occur when they found Donald Trump guilty? And your big take was, but Trump said lock her up. Remember that? Remember that was your take that day? Remember that? Mark it down, Tom. That's your take. Imagine it. It'd be like seeing the plane hit a 9/11 and I look over and my friend Tom's like, well, we need to talk, I have a serious concern here. What kind of mileage was that plane getting? How much fossil fuels are being used on it? Good comment. Good work. Way to get to the heart of what's... Oh, shit. I don't know. It's, mileage, yeah. Tom gets the joke. A little inside joke there. I don't know. It's shit. I wish that this shit wouldn't happen. Like, there are a billion arguments against Donald Trump. You didn't need to be corrupt against him. You didn't. You didn't need to have a fucking system that protects criminals all throughout Congress, like the Clintons and the Bidens, and then farcically goes after Trump in all these ways. It's blatant. You didn't have to do it. The Democrats could have hired me, paid me $200,000. I'd have happily fucking sold out for $200,000 a year. And I could have told them without any corruption whatsoever how to have a political message and platform that would have them win. Could have done it easily. But they couldn't do that because that's not the system we have. Oh, he'll definitely still be able to run. That's out of the question. He could run for office. That's certainly. The question is whether they'll try to jail him or not. Judge Merchant's corrupt enough that he may try to jail him. But if I'm understanding that he won't actually go to jail, even if he's sentenced to that, until the appeals process is up. And I know the appeals won't be until after the election. Tom says, in my mind, the best argument now against Trump is that he really ran on Drain the Swamp, but he did not drain the swamp. Right, that is a solid argument, but that's an argument against Trump in the primary. That's not an argument against him in the general, because the argument against Trump is you didn't drain the swamp, and the argument against Biden is you are the swamp. So that'd be like if someone ran on locking up serial killers, and his opponent's a serial killer. And you say, well, the first time you were in office, you didn't lock up many serial killers. Right, but I'm still not going to vote for a serial killer. I argued till I was blue in the face is why I'm still saying it. The chance of Trump winning I'm putting is remarkably small because I know the amount of corruption this is just the beginning. It's going to get worse and worse. One of the things I said 3-4 months ago when I was talking to Aftershock and other people on here, I said, you won't believe the stories that they'll come out with. I said, they'll claim he has a tape saying that he said the N-word. That story broke today. And if they fabricate it with AI, who's going to know the difference? Biden may pardon Trump. It's actually not a bad political, for this one at least. It's not a bad idea. I don't know that he can, though. I'd have to, I'm no lawyer. Because this is a state crime, I don't know that Biden can pardon him for it. Am I correct in that? But if he can pardon him, he may, and it would actually be a shrewd political move. It'd be farcical. We know that this was Biden's DOJ doing this. But he could, I'm above all this. But I still wouldn't be shocked if Biden's not the candidate. I'm telling you. Now, I talked to Aircraft Sparky about not selling out my integrity in order to go, and I truly believe that. But I do believe in holding the left to the standards they seek to hold us to, and holding the establishment to those standards. So in that vein, Republicans in Ohio, while they look and see that their candidate for president is currently going through this trial and was most likely going to be found guilty, that is incredibly corrupt, that everyone could see, it turns out, completely legally, that that they have the Democrats dead to rights, that the Democrats didn't file in a timely manner, and Joe Biden is now not going to be on the ballot in Ohio. That's it. End of story. Ohio Republicans, if there was going to be a sort of tit for tat from Republicans, would say, okay, we don't have to be unethical. We don't have to do anything unscrupulous. These were the rules. You didn't comply to the rules. We're totally within our rights to say, that's it. It's like the old, you're playing chess with someone and they touch a piece. Hey, you got to move that, man. You touched it. But, hey, that's the rules. Especially when you're doing every dirty trick in the world to beat us. And what did Ohio Republicans do? We'll hold a special legislative session to make sure that Joe Biden's on the ballot. It doesn't matter that Trump was likely to win anyways. What about down ballot? What do you think turnout would be for Democrats if there wasn't even a Democratic candidate for president on the ballot? Yeah, Republicans came out and said, Republican governor was like, we'll hold a special session. That's, even in that, the simplest of retaliations, couldn't manage it. Another thing worth saying, I was talking about sort of how the left and how they're they truly believe they're morally virtuous to you, and that so they're justified. And I talk about this a lot. And Tom could back me up on this. We have a lot of mutual friends that are left wing. Tom's like a centrist left winger. That we have friends that are quite left wing, and I'll go to events, and oftentimes I'll get started on with politics, like a wedding or something. I'm thinking of one in particular, and people start bringing up politics. It's always incumbent on me to be like, yeah. Or family events I go to, extended family events. Oh, Trump, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Right? We live in a society where it's like you can't talk about politics and religion. But that's not true. Society, we find it totally acceptable to talk about politics if that politics is bashing Republicans, conservatism, Trump, etc. That's fine. That is completely within bounds in general public settings. You can't do the opposite. Now, increasingly, people are waking up and they're pushing back on it. Okay, someone ban Conrad. I'm not buying viewers. Eat shit. That's the difference. Democrats get on juries and they say, we'll do whatever the fuck we can to find anyone guilty for political reasons. We don't give a shit. We don't care. Republicans get on juries and say, let's see the facts. Let's do our best to determine whether or not this was a person who's innocent or guilty. That's it. Now run that experiment millions of times. What happens? Yeah, that's true, Tom. Some are left installed. Still friends for whatever. Nah, they're still my friends. If there was a Republican AG in like Alabama, in a deep red state that said, we think Biden in 2024 falsified business records because it turned out he paid hush money to Hunter Biden's baby mama. He paid, and he didn't put it as a campaign finance. So we're saying that the misdemeanor's extended. It's now a felony. Let's do it. You know what the irony is? That jury would find Biden not guilty. That's the irony. Because those right-wingers would say, this seems political. Does that ever shake your belief in morals? No. I'm not the most religious person in the world, but I do consider myself a Christian, a bad one, a struggling Christian. Not struggling that I don't believe, but struggling that I'm not the greatest person. I sin all the time. I could do better. I don't go to church, But isn't that sort of what it's all about? Is it? Right? Isn't that sort of the point of Christianity? That it's not easy, that you will be tested. So, I'm not going to say that there aren't times that it's like, I don't think to myself, it would be nice to be immoral. You don't even have to think about it in the political sense. I think that for me, it's easier to be more embittered in an economic sense. You know how many people I know, you know how many hours I work a week? You know how many people I know that own way better houses than me because they slipped and fell and got hurt and got disability and cashed out a fat check? Or they sit at home, they'll message me, hey, you want to get on and play this video game or whatever? And I'm like, no, I don't really have time to play games. But they're unemployed, and so. And I used to say, it's like, I've thought about this a lot. It's like, I used to be like, what a dumb way to live. But who's stupid? I have a herniated disc thanks to an injury I got at work, but I refuse to miss any work. So tomorrow morning I got to go to physical therapy, then a massage, then I got to drive towards Pittsburgh to my office to drop off paperwork so I could come home, eat dinner with my family, maybe watch a movie, go to bed, wake up the next morning, go into work Saturday. Then I work Saturday 10 a.m., 24/7, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday until 2 o'clock. As soon as I leave Wednesday at 2 o'clock, I go to physical therapy. Then I get home and finally get to see my family after that many days. I'll have dinner with them. Then I'll wake up the next day and I have to drive out to Pittsburgh to drop paperwork out to the office. But other than that, I'll have next Thursday. I'll have that day. Then Friday, I have physical therapy at 10 a.m. Then I have to go for a massage. And then I'm probably going to have to do shit around the house because it's going to be 2 weeks before I get to something like that. Or I could say, oh, my back's killing me. I'm just going to stay home and collect a workers' comp check. Now, I know, now I'm not saying it won't progress to that maybe my back will get bad enough and there are certainly people that's true. If you're legitimately hurt, that's fine. And it is getting worse. My back's getting worse. But right now, it does not interfere with my job. And so it would be immoral of me to claim that it does to try to get time to stay home. But I'd get to hang out with my kid. I do DDP yoga. The question is, I stopped because of the herniated disc. They say some of those exercises aren't ones I should be doing. You think it's going to need to be operated? They told me 90% of herniated discs you don't need to have operated. Now that story that I just told, that's all true. That's an easier sell for challenging my morals than politics. That's tangible. I can see it right in front of me. I don't see my son 2/3 of the week because of work. There's an out if I was unscrupulous and immoral. Happy fisted. That's good. That's good. That might be true, Calgal. I think I go in for an MRI in 2 weeks is what they're going to want to do. But yeah, these juries, you know, and I see it like I see right wingers. Well, I don't want to be on a jury. Why? That sucks, Crusader. Hopefully, I'm really hoping I could avoid surgery. I really am, but. Thanks, man. Thanks, Cowgirl. I appreciate it. It means a lot. But yeah, that's where we're at. What if your morality means evil wins? How far are you willing to take that? Thanks, not your average guy. I know. I hope I don't eat it too. So what are you willing to do? First off, I don't think sacrificing our morality is strategically worth it. In other words, I don't think if we sacrifice our morality at this point, all of a sudden that means we win. So what would be sacrificing our morality? Engaging in violence? Like the left does? There's no reason to throw away your morality. And understand this. The deck is stacked. The real problem isn't that we must violate our morality. Our sin is greater than that. We've already sinned. Our sin is apathy. It's laziness. That's the sin. For 50 years, that's the sin. You didn't give a shit. I didn't give a shit. My parents didn't give a shit. They saw the signs. Some people rang warning bells, but ultimately they were comfortable and didn't give a shit. And so year after year after year, the establishment, people that were in power, that were entrenching themselves in power, took more and more wealth and more power from this country and entrenched themselves over and over and over again. Then they got into the school systems and they started indoctrinating kids over and over again. Then they infected almost our entire entertainment industry over and over again. And no one did anything. Even people that were raising the sound bells like me came late. And even I don't practice what I preach totally. I'll sit here and tell you how corrupt these things are, but at the end of the day, I'm streaming on YouTube. Right? I still have to pay for a subscription to Disney Plus. So it's no longer that we need to violate our morality and all of a sudden become liars or become violent. That's not the issue at hand. The best chance, how did I hurt my back? The exact injury was someone I was taking care of started to fall downstairs, and I twisted backwards almost like completely and grabbed them by the shirt and fell back with them. That's how I hurt my back. See, the best chance we have of fighting back is to wake up people that are in the middle. That's the best chance we have. And the best way to do that is being honest, being intelligent, being diligent, but being honest. Lying will eventually get you cut out. It's like anything. It's like streaming here, right? I tell people this all the time. My number one advice to anyone giving a speech or wanting to be a streamer or anything, if anyone would ever want my advice, I don't know why they would. It's not like I'm big time or anything like that. But my number one piece of advice is the same thing. Be authentic. Be yourself. It might take you longer to grow, but people appreciate that. People will eventually see through if you're a grifter. They will. And they'll move on to something else. They will. So you just have to be yourself. The same is true of trying to persuade people to your political or cultural beliefs. If you're being unethical in an attempt to do that, it's going to backfire eventually. Now, it could work if you already are entrenched, if you're already the group that's in power, and you could use unethically those tools you have of those powerful institutions. Yeah, it could work. But it can't work for us because we didn't do that. Because we were lazy for 50 years. And we let them entrench their power. And I say this all the time and no one wants to hear it. There is not a quick fix. It's not like we elect Trump or we elect DeSantis or we elect Vivek in 2024. There, we did it. That's not how it's going to work. It's going to take decades. My child will be fighting this fight 30 years from now. That's the truth. That's how long it took to get us here. And if we're going to claw our way back out, that's how long it's going to take. And there's no guarantee that we win. Trump did not downplay the virus, the pandemic. That's not true. What happened was Anthony Fauci, who has no reason to like Donald Trump, admitted when the Woodward book thing came out that there was nothing that Trump was telling the public that wasn't recommended to him by people like Dr. Fauci. And so what we're told is Dr. Fauci, who famously in February said, at the end of February, said that the common flu would be more lethal than COVID. What we're told is 2 weeks later, Trump should have overruled Fauci and been telling the public, holy shit, we're all going to die, which is bullshit. In fact, most of the harm that ended up coming out as a result of the period of COVID was the exact opposite of what you're saying, Eternized Dragon. It wasn't that the leader of the country was telling people not to take it seriously enough. It's that people were too scared of it, which resulted in states doing things like lockdowns, which resulted in sending COVID patients into nursing homes, which led to tens of thousands of deaths. That was the problem. The fear-mongering is what led to the greatest harms, not the downplaying of it. So seeing as how the downplaying didn't lead to deaths, and in fact, the downplaying was going right in line with what the medical experts that we were told we were supposed to listen to were saying, I don't see how you could say that Trump's tantamount to, what was your term here? That's tangent to negligent homicide. Eternized Dragon says, don't you lie at me. I didn't lie at you. I told you the truth. What part did I lie? Trump is not guilty of negligent homicide for giving a hopeful message to people. I didn't. Eternized Dragon, goodbye. We'll see you. You could call in right now, Eternized Dragon, or you're banned. It's up to you. Your choice. We'll give you a minute to respond, then you're banned. Isn't this the guy that was spamming about traveling to other worlds yesterday? Isn't this guy? You don't have to use voice chat. You could use audio. It's fine. Calling in? This probably isn't him, but there's someone in the chat. Probably isn't him, but there's someone in the chat. Okay, you got to mute your channel. Is this Eternized Dragon?
Nah, this is not that guy.
Probably isn't him, but there's someone in the chat. Okay, you got to mute your channel. Is this?
Does that work?
Yes, that works. 1 second. Let me. Okay, Eternized Dragon, you had your chance. We'll see you later, man. All right. So what's up? I can't see your name. Discord's weird.
I'm Roar89.
Okay, really. Oh, okay. What's happening, man? Yeah, I know you.
I've been watching for a little bit. I started watching you when, I've seen you debate Destiny and stuff a lot, and I always really liked you because I don't hate Destiny. He's not the worst liberal, you know, kind of guy.
I agree.
Like,
that's how I feel. Yeah.
At least he's reasonable on some stuff, but he's been really weird on the Israel shit. So I don't know where he's at with that.
Are you more of a? My stance on is I don't think we should be funding either side of this conflict.
I agree with you. It's like America first, man. Like, what are we doing with all this money to other countries that don't care about us either? They fucking shit on us.
Now, the truth is, when it comes to the morality of who's right with the, Gaza, Israel business, I could see it both ways. But ultimately, the end, I don't really give a shit. It's like to me, I'm looking at it like who's right in a fight between my neighbors, a husband and wife. I might have an opinion, but it's none of my business, right? I'm not going to interject. It's like, okay, they're yelling at each other. So I might be overhearing it through my window going, actually, the wife's right, but I don't give a shit. I'm not going to say anything or do anything.
That argument, like they're both probably right at times.
Right. And the truth is, this is how I see it. I think that I don't even know. I'll be as brief as possible. For me, October 7th was telling because there were so many people that believed the official narrative that we were told on that day, that basically Hamas came into like a music concert and butchered innocent people and possibly raped people, and they were celebrating it. Now, oftentimes what I find is this, last night there was a lot of this going on in the big long conversation I had. More important than the actual facts of what happened is someone's reaction to what they think the truth is. For example, if I think that Hamas butchered these people and I say, yay, and then it turns out 5 days later they didn't butcher people, that doesn't mean I'm not a monster. Because the fact of whether or not the butchering occurred is irrelevant to when I thought it occurred, I cheered it on. And so a lot of leftist masks came off when they were celebrating October 7th. And I did a video on this. I said, it's not, I could respect the position of, I don't believe what the news is saying. That's something I could say, okay, fair. Let's wait and see what comes out. Perhaps we're being misled about exactly what happened. That's a position I didn't take umbrage with. What I took umbrage was the people saying, this was a long time coming. This is a day to celebrate. Yay. It's like, well, wait a minute. And so from that position, I think the left is completely unhinged with many of these people. Their hatred of Israel is so strong that they would cheer for a horrendous attack like that. However, to push back, certainly I think Israel has been involved in our government far too long. And I think that it's, I look at it like that.
Too influential in our government for not even respecting our fucking country.
That's right. And so I look at it like this. I look at it like the old cliche of like, let's say you have like a gang versus dirty cops, right? The gang fucking sucks. They'll murder you. They'll take your car. They'll carjack you, shoot you in the face. The cops won't be that brazen, but they'll set you up. They'll do it through the appearance of the legal system, right?
And then they'll hide behind the appeal to authority.
That's right.
Like, well,
and that's how I view Israel-Palestine. Both sides suck. Hamas is the kind of morons that'll put a GoPro on and film them killing people, which is insane.
Have you seen some of those videos? It's friggin' wild.
Yeah. And Israel's the type of people that will be like, oh, you know, we thought there was one Hamas person in that village, so we carpet bombed the whole fucking thing. You know?
Anyway, I didn't call to talk about
Yeah,
Israel and Palestine, but that's how I found you, was through Destiny. And then when you were on Timcast, I finally realized who you were, and I could find you, and I was like, awesome, this is great.
Yeah,
but,
good. I'm glad. Yeah.
Your opinions, you're like, you nail it for me. Like, this is exactly how I feel about stuff. I'm like, good, there's other people out there that see it the same way. I'm not crazy. Like,
well, that is,
but,
I'll honestly say, real quick, I'll just say that's one of the reasons that I started doing this channel, because what happens is our mainstream narrative doesn't really have voices like ours anywhere, right? You're starting to see it
I'm a little conservative, but I'm not freaking anywhere close to where the people that govern us are freaking insane. These old men who just want to spend money and freaking send people to war and freaking not help anybody. What's going on? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And like, you know, bringing it to today, that to me is the thing that it's the biggest black pill for me, is watching people that should know better of how corrupt this is, like, celebrating. And it's almost like I'm the kind of idiot that I'm like a prisoner of the moment, in the sense of, like, if I just watch a movie that I like if you ever seen the movie Braveheart?
Yes.
If I watch Braveheart tonight, like, my next 3 live streams, I'll be talking about Braveheart. I'll be like, oh yeah, it's like that scene in Braveheart. Like, that's just the way. So I read the Gulag Archipelago, and like, which by Solzhenitsyn, and which is basically,
everybody should read it. It's worth a read.
Okay, yeah, you know, yeah. And so, like, I can't help but see a lot of, you know, analogies from now to then. We're certainly not as bad as they were. Like, that was a hell that's almost beyond imagining.
The main thing I called in for was this Trump trial thing is just like, I don't see where this takes us.
Well, I guess the Gulag Archipelago, Tom's the name of the book. I guess what I was saying is, you know, for me, the black pill is this, that you see these people that should know better and they're cheering it on. And it's very reminiscent to the Gulag Archipelago, where you had all these people that cheered on sort of the Stas.
And it comes back to bite them.
Right. And then 10 years later, they're thrown in the Gulag. Yeah, and
it's
then,
like, those are the weaker people that can't survive the Gulag.
Right.
They're going to be the strong people. They've sitting there in the beginning are going to be sitting there waiting for them.
Yeah, and what's funny is there's no justice, though. Like, that's maybe the saddest part. There's a lot of moments that, like, teared me up, but that maybe the saddest part I'll get to in a second. But what's funny is what Solzhenitsyn said. A lot of those people, the party people that then the party turned against and arrested them, right? And these weren't, when I say party people, don't get me mistaken, I don't mean like politicians. I mean like average citizens that were like, yay, they're arresting my neighbor. To hell with him. He was against the party, you know, and then all of a sudden they get arrested. He said many of them, when you would talk to them in the gulags, they were like, well, they only made a mistake with me. They're still great. And if I have to go down for the party, so be it. That's how indoctrinated they were. It's like, imagine that. Like, you know, they fucked you over, but you're like, but I'm the only one. Everyone else is actually
They would never do that to me. Like,
and if they do, then it was worth it, because everyone else is guilty. That's the mindset. No,
it's so frustrating, man.
The thing that, you know, for me, like, one of the hardest parts was, I don't know if I think he's reading someone else's story. Solzhenitsyn. It may have been his direct story, but I think it's someone else's that he's talking about.
I think it was a combination of a
handful of stories. The whole book was, but this particular story. He says, he's like, you know, tells the story of this guy who basically, for jealousy, his neighbor turned him in, right? And then he gets sent to the gulag, and then he gets tortured before he's sentenced, and basically, while being tortured, he confesses to the crime. And then he gets sentenced to 10 years in this horrible gulag, and he spends the 10 years, and he gets out, and he goes back to his town, and the first person he sees whistling, walking down the street happily is the fucking guy that tortured him. And nothing's happened.
Man. I'd go back to the gulag. It'd be over.
Like, and he's like, I didn't even have the energy to. It's like, what's the point at this point? Like, and Solzhenitsyn talks about that. The latter half of his book, he talks, because you have to understand, he's writing post once all of this shit comes out.
Yeah,
and so
hindsight 2020.
Right,
kind of thing,
and so there was a conversation going on in the Soviet Union at the time of like, well, very similar to COVID. Well, we all made mistakes. Let's let bygones be bygones.
And there's only the people that made the mistakes that are like, maybe we should just all forget about it.
Right.
It's like,
and that's what Solzhenitsyn's saying. He's like, I don't forget. I remember what you did.
Hey,
right?
I don't forget either, man. I don't forget at all. Like, I'll remember all this stuff, and I know it's probably nonsense, but just watching this happen is like, these people don't realize what's like. You don't like him, Orange Man bad, fine, but this trial was fucking nuts. Like, if you look at any of it, if you've been following it even a little bit, like, nothing is going the way protocol should go. Like, nobody's, like, it's freaking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, I think that's the most disheartening part is seeing people that should know better cheer for this, because it's blatant. Now, the one uphill battle we have to fight is we didn't have cameras there. If we had cameras, I wouldn't have to.
That's bullcrap. If the president, if somebody who's a president's on trial, we should see it.
That's right. We should have been almost any other trial I could see on court TV, but not this one, And so what it relies on me then doing is I have to listen to someone that was at the trial. I personally, the person I thought that was the best on this, and I'm biased, is Jonathan Turley, who is also biased, but we're all biased. But I think Jonathan Turley is very prudent in trying to limit his bias to objectivity. But I know others, the left's going to say, no, he's crooked, he's a Trump supporter, whatever. Anyways, like when I read Turley just trying to give a factual recount, play by play, what's happening minute by minute, which I've done all throughout this trial, it's ludicrous. Like I could go over it for 8 hours. And
I was debating somebody on Twitter about it, and I was just like, I don't see how this won't be overturned on appeal, but I don't know how long that will take.
It'll be after the election, the appeal.
Right, and that's ridiculous.
But that's the whole point of it.
If that's not election interference, then it's like we're going to do everything we want, but you're going to go down for bullcrap. And if I know this is going to sound dumb and freaking whatever, but I still say this, and liberals always just freaking tell me wah. But if Hillary gets away with all of this crap, all of it, they're just wipe it away. He's like, oh, we can't do that. Whatever the FBI guy that freaking was investigating her was like, we can't do that. No person would do that. Like, what are you talking about? If any politician should be in prison, and a lot of them should, Hillary Clinton should be the first freaking one.
Well, to me, here's the thing. This is what I always say. Any of the specific crimes that Trump's been accused of, right? Or Hillary, or Joe Biden for that matter, pale in comparison that if we have a justice system that is putting their thumb on the scale and covering up crimes for the side they like, but going after in often illegal or corrupt ways the other side, that is a bigger threat to our country than anything Trump or Biden or Hillary's accused of. For two reasons. One, because it has more influence, because you could lock up people like this and other such things. But secondly, because that system exists in perpetuity. A president can only serve for up to 8 years. An individual corrupt politician you theoretically could deal with. An entire system that's corrupt, involving all of these executive agencies, prosecutors at the state level, jurists that are willing
to say, like, Trump's not going to leave office if he gets in again. It's like, what do you mean?
Right,
nobody that's running any place is going to let him stay. The government, even the military, isn't that pro-Trump that they're going to be like, yeah, we're going to let you freaking do this.
When I talked to Connor and Jeptan there a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about Trump's corruption and this and that and the other, and I said, but the irony is everything that you are worried about Trump doing, the Biden administration's actively doing, and every single thing that we see proves that Trump would not be able to do any of this. Trump couldn't even pull out of Afghanistan because his generals lied to him.
That's treason as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I agree. The check mark against Trump is that literally every agency that he held power over, that he was the executive over, hated him. And so if he said
everybody hates you,
if he said, James Comey, I want you to arrest Joe Biden, Comey would have immediately called his friends in the press, leaked that story, became a whistleblower, and been on CNN within 24 hours talking about how Trump's a fascist that needs to go to prison. But when Joe Biden's team does it, it's, and then you have all these people, they're projecting that what Trump...
Well, the De Niro thing was amusing. That's pretty funny.
Trump may do what they are doing, and they're fearful of it. And again, I go back to the Ari Melber clip. I think that this clip sums it up. I'll play it. I'll let you go here in a couple seconds. I'll find this clip and play it, and then I got another caller on the line. But this Ari Melber clip, right, where he's like, he's some MSNBC guy, and he's like, if Elon Musk buys Twitter, my goodness, what if he kicks off the opposing candidate for president? What if he starts to shadow ban people that are political persuasion he doesn't like? And he's just like, he's literally just explaining the status quo that benefits the establishment and Democrat Party and saying, my God, wouldn't it be terrible if our opponents did the same thing to us we did to them? That's what he's saying.
the funniest thing in the world. It's like, oh, you don't like that?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. All right, man.
What you're doing. Like, and you're celebrating it.
Thank you so much for calling in. I'll play this video and then I'll get to old Joe. I really appreciate it, man. I
Thanks,
really do.
brother.
Yep. Take it easy.
Bye.
All right, I'll play this video for you. By the way, let's probably
Twitter or Facebook or what have you.
Now, as I play this, I want you to think of all of the Democrats that are going to spend the next, I don't know, 6 months or whatever, saying if Trump gets elected, he'll lock up his opponents. He'll have state prosecutors. He'll work in tandem with state prosecutors to, like, make up crimes and go after his opponents. That's what he'll do.
You own all of Twitter or Facebook or what have you. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election.
No.
Elon Musk says this is all to help people because he is just a free speech, philosophically clear, open-minded helper.
That's who they are. That's who those people are today. They don't have a problem with locking up their political opposition. They don't have a problem with making up crimes to go after people. They don't have a problem with Trump or with the president ordering people to be arrested. They don't have a problem with prosecutors running on the promise of, I promise to lock up my political opponent. They're fine with all of it. Just like they were fine with spying on Trump with the Russia collusion investigation, accusing him of colluding with Russia, and using evidence that was obtained by Hillary colluding with Russians, with at least a Russian, that she knew was disinformation to feed to the FBI, that the FBI knew they couldn't verify but still used it to spy. They were fine with that. They were fine with the obvious bias of James Comey, of Christopher Way, of Weissman, of Peter Strzok talking about an insurance policy. They were fine with all of that. They didn't care. Orange man bad. But now they're going to say, my God, if Trump gets elected, what if he does that? All right, let's bring on old Joe. What's up, old Joe? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
Yep. What's happening?
Oh, not much. Just sitting around a little bit and wanted to bounce a couple things off of you. I hope you don't mind if I wax poetic just briefly here.
Have at her.
So, when I saw the verdict today, I didn't expect that. And then you guys were talking around a concept with the earlier caller and you know, some of the books you mentioned around how good people stand by and let bad things happen. Yeah. And that's the big piece I'm struggling with right now. It's actually not, even coming from outside of your country, that I think this is a lot bigger deal than what we generally acknowledge it as. And I'm wondering how you personally deal with that, knowing, like I myself have seen really good people go down because no one around them would stand up. And it wasn't a matter of convincing anybody anything. Everybody knew the truth, but they also knew there was a subtle risk in speaking out against whatever authority was acting in an unjust fashion. So I myself wonder how we combat that and how we get people to have the courage to stand up and speak up for what's right.
It's a difficult threshold, right? Because I'd like to tell you that I'm the type of person that takes great risk and says the truth no matter what, but that's not true. Like, for example, I gave a story about I go to a wedding, and this wedding is a bunch of left-wing friends of mine, and at that wedding, they start to give me shit about Trump. Now, I could speak the truth, which is you're all indoctrinated, in my opinion. I will debate you on the facts of what you're talking about right here, and I think you're rude to bring this up. I could have said that, but that basically ruins the wedding. So I just swallow my pride and say, okay, because I don't want to ruin my friend's wedding. Now, that's sort of a silly argument. You could say, well, that's not really what we're talking about. And I agree. What you're talking about is something different. But even in that sense, people have asked me before, what's my advice if you're in college and you have a left-wing professor? You want to know what I did? I was super left-wing. Like, I had this geology professor, and within 15 minutes of the first day of class, I could tell he was a communist, like immediately. He started talking about climate change and all of this stuff. I sat in the back, and the second day of class, he starts asking the class what solutions to climate change we can have, and the first student's like, wind or solar, and there's all these arguments about specific things, and I specifically waited and then raised my hand, and I was like, the problem's not what specific service from or fuel from the earth we're getting. The problem is that we have a consumption mindset, that we feel that Mother Earth owes us something, when in reality, the question we should be asking is, how can we benefit Mother Earth? And I got an A+ in that class, even though I didn't do half the work. Why? Because the indoctrinated professor didn't give a shit about actually rewarding people and teaching people. He wanted people that were sycophantic and spread his message. And I was great at that because I understand exactly what that sort of message is. And so my advice to people is like, you know what? You're spending big amounts of dollars to go to campus. At this point, you've already made the decision. So it's not worth rocking the boat. You're going to fail. You're going to piss your money away. And what benefit are you going to get? But the problem is, when you extrapolate that to thousands of interactions a day, right, occurring in town after town after town after town, inevitably that switches the cultural momentum. And that's how we get to a place like today, right? Because a lot of us just stood by and said nothing while things were going. So for me, it's a threshold argument, and I don't know the answer. You sort of have to make your own judgment in each specific in each specific situation. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that in every situation ever, I'm going to speak truth to power. That's not true. It's not like the movie Liar, Liar, where you just blurt out the truth, even if you know it's a really bad idea at the time. Maybe there's criticism to be made that I should speak up more. I think that I've spoken up quite a bit. I think I've been brave in it. It's cost me a lot of job opportunities. It's cost me a big audience on streaming. It's probably eventually going to cost me my current job that I love. But I still do it, but I don't think that I do it to the maximum level. And so I think you make a great point. Yeah.
Can I say, I'll make one point about yourself and then I'll make a point about this professor you talked about, and then I'll finish with one final question and let somebody else jump up if there's people waiting. So first of all, your comment that your positions have cost you in terms of viewership is entirely accurate in my opinion. I think your skill as a debater, and I'm not saying this just to be a simp or a fan. After I became familiar with your channel, I went back and watched a debate you had with Andrew Wilson over Christian nationalism. And it's my opinion that you legitimately won that debate from an impartial stance. And that's rare because that fellow is a good debater.
He is. Yeah,
and the fact that you're here with your 50 viewers and he has 4,000 or so on his live streams or whatever he did the last live stream is telling you something. The second I'll say about that professor, I've thought a lot. Like I spent most of my adult life in university. And that professor, I believe, I used to feel that those people were convinced they were doing good work. Now I firmly believe that even that indoctrinated Marxist professor, as 20% of them in universities now admit to being, I believe they understand somewhere deep down inside them that what they're doing is not morally correct. That I firmly believe if you have a deep enough conversation with those people, eventually their worldview collapses in on itself. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a question, Rob, to check my understanding of the trajectory of our society, and you see if you agree with me or not. So my father, who would now be 85 years old, was a man who I watch, a successful man, never graduated from high school, but built a successful construction company, raised 4 children. We all got the opportunity to go to any education we wanted. He was the kind of person that if his worst enemy were to be in court and he had to go testify on that man's behalf, if it were the truth, he would do so immediately. He loathed lying. And I think that in his day, there were many men around like that. It seems to me like men like that are not as common in today's society. And I'm wondering if that's me wishing for a more beautiful past, or if that's a reality. So I'd just like you to comment on that, and I'll drop down. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, old Joe. I always enjoy hearing from you, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I do think that there are less people like that, and I still think that there are more of those people that aren't on the far left or aren't in the establishment, right? So it's sort of like I was talking about earlier. Those people still exist. And you have to feel for a jury, you only need 1 of 12 of those people to get a verdict that would at least be a hung jury. That's why I firmly believe that if you had a deep red state right now that would go tit for tat with Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or something like that, they'd probably be a hung jury or not guilty, because there still are those people out there. I like to think that I would be one of those people, that I would be like, look, I'm going to only look at the facts of this case, even if it's someone I despise, and try to be as impartial as possible. I was just reading yesterday in the context of a debate I was having, I think it was James Madison at one point defended, like, without the audience knowing, was giving a legal defense for some of the troops of the British Crown. That's how strongly he felt about it. Like, even the people that he had sworn to be his enemies. And I think that is the mark of a decent and a moral person, and a strong person. A strong person should hold to their moral convictions, even in the most challenging of times. And sometimes that means foregoing immediate short-term satisfaction. It would be real cathartic to see Joe Biden hoisted on his own petard and some right-wing AG somewhere to throw his ass in jail right now and, book him in lockup and then force him to be in trial every day until the election. That would be cathartic, right? But if it's just made up out of wholesale cloth, I couldn't support that. Now, if it was investigating an actual charge or a precedent that's been set, like campaign finance charges here and the concealing of them, that's a different question. But I think the greater question will be, I think there are less of those people, and it's a shame. I think the greater, point I would make is I think you're going to see less and less of those. Because if that man, like your father, keeps getting beaten down politically, culturally, economically, if he keeps getting kicked while he's down, if he keeps going to work every day and he's virtuous and moral and people take advantage of him over and over, the sad truth is all of us have a breaking point. And I think that what you're seeing is people are reaching that point more and more, which is they just say, I'm done with this. I don't care anymore. My morality is no longer as important to me as fighting back against you, because you have exhibited that you treat me as an enemy that will crush me at all cost. And so therefore, in order for my self-preservation, I'm willing to forgo some of the principles that perhaps I would have held before. And there are short-term benefits to that, not just politically. If you go back to what I was talking about economically, how many people have just given up and said, you know what, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to do the 9 to 5. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of working my fingers to the bone for nothing. Done. You look back, by any objective measure, our standard of living is better than what our grandparents or our great-grandparents. And yet, look at how they worked. Look at the hours they put in, the dangers of the jobs they did, And so it's almost like, I think what we're seeing now, one of the big differences between back then and now on that front is that you could see, back then it was like that was the only way that you could see. That's what everyone you knew did. But now you could see that it's because the game is rigged. You see it, right? And it's tempting. But that's, regardless if you're religious or not, like that's life, right? That's the temptation. That's the apple. It's there. I had a friend once that told me he was at a party and people were doing heroin, and he told me he was going to try it. And I was like, I wouldn't do that, man. Now, I've done drugs. I was an alcoholic, and I had done my fair share of drugs, but I never did downers, pain pills, heroin. I didn't. Never made sense to me. But I had a lot of friends that did. I live in a poor area. And this friend of mine was like, yeah, I think I'll try it. And I was like, I wouldn't. And then like a week later, I ran into him. And he said, yeah, I went to this party and I did heroin. And he's like, you got it all wrong, Rob. It's great. It felt great. And I was like, of course it did. Duh. People aren't hooked to it because it feels like shit. It's that short-term satisfaction. You gave in. And I don't need to tell you, it did not go well for that person who struggled for 15 years with addiction, who's doing much better now. But he would admit. And that's, we fight those battles every day. I lose those battles consistently. I'm trying to get healthy right now. I'm trying to lose weight. I'm trying to get my back. I could make all the excuses in the world. Oh, a freak accident at work hurt my back. But the truth is, I let my personal physical shape get out of control. That's the truth, which exacerbated and increased the chances of me having some sort of serious injury. That's truth. I could complain about the fact how many people I have on here, but the truth is, oftentimes I'm very lazy. There's a lot of times that I could put more research into things, or come up here and stream in a more effective way, or I could take lessons on how to sell myself better, and I don't do it. So there's, it's something that I always struggle with. It's easy to sit here and say, be the virtuous man, but I fall short every day. Every day. I know that. And we all do. But the level of which people are falling short and just checking out, I agree with you, it's increasing. And it's easy for me to sit here and say, no, stay the course. Stay the course. Don't sell out your morals. And I say it all the time. I do. But I'm not in their position. As far as Andrew Wilson winning that debate, of course I won that debate. I like Andrew. He's a friend of mine. I think the reason that Andrew has so many fans is twofold. One of them, well, it's not unfair. One of them, heavy criticism of Andrew, and one of them just a matter of circumstance. The matter of circumstance is he does content that's more palpable to people. I'm not going to go on the whatever podcast and yell at a bunch of OnlyFans girls. I just really have nothing to say. I have my opinions on sex work, but I don't feel that I try to leave that shit out of stuff. So I really don't want to go on whatever and be like, oh, what's up, ho? What you talking about? So and that's easily digestible content that people like. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's not what I'm here to say. Dude, I watch Judge Judy all the time. That could be considered trash TV. So, people like what they like. That's no problem. I don't mind at all. I'm not sour grapes about that. But that's one of the reasons that Andrew's got so big, because he's gotten exposure on those sort of platforms with that type of content. And a lot of Andrew's content is sort of going after people for personal issues, drama, fighting back and forth, which is absolutely fine. It's not really something I do, though. The other thing, so that's sort of a matter of happenstance of the type of things that Andrew talks about. The other thing is, the reason that Andrew has a bigger channel than me is because he works his ass off, like way harder than I do. Now, in my defense, I have a full-time job, and his channel is his source of income. So it's a little easier for him to do it, but he does. He's one of the hardest working people in the space. He's constantly traveling. He's helping other people out. Like, I probably shouldn't even say this. The other day I put up like this harmless tweet on about my tire popping. I was out to Pizza Hut with my family and my tire blew up. And so I lunked my car across the street to Walmart, and because it was winter tires, they had to replace all 4 tires, and it ended up costing me like $800. And I just put, it's kind of funny that there was a point in my life where I'd have been like, crap, that sucks. And I've been kind of grumbling about that. But now, you know how I looked at it? I got to spend a day with my wife and kid. And it's like, I had the money. I didn't have to put it on a credit card. I'd been working a lot of hours, so we had the money. And it definitely put us behind on things we wanted to do, but I had the money. And all things considered, it could have been a lot worse. I could have broke down out of town and I had to get a tow truck. I could have broke down while I was at work with a client on the way to a doctor appointment or something. That would have been a big deal. But it didn't. It happened right next to the thing. I got to hang out with my wife and kids. I'm very lucky. Right? And that's it. That was the only point. I wasn't like putting up a GoFundMe or anything. And I probably shouldn't even say this, and he'll probably be mad at me for saying this. But almost immediately, Andrew Wilson messaged me and said, hey, man, sorry to hear that. How much money was the tires? I'll take care of it. Now, I haven't done a show with Andrew Wilson in months. He doesn't have to even talk to me if he didn't want. A simple, it sucks, sorry to hear that, man, would have been more than enough. But that's the kind of guy he is. I've talked to that guy hours upon hours upon hours behind the scenes, him giving me advice, just talking about political issues, cultural issues, talking about family. I think he's almost the inverse of most other streamers you see, where other streamers put on this face that they're really nice people and then they'll stab you in the back. Andrew puts on this face like he's this hard ass like jerk, but then behind the scenes he's like the nicest guy in the world. So, yeah, that's fine, Poopin. You could say that, and you might not like. I'm just talking about Andrew Wilson as a person. So, I don't know that he particularly wanted me to mention that, but he did do that, and I thought it was incredibly generous of him. So, what else we got going on? And it's one of the things that's crazy too is it's the two. Scott Adams calls it the two movies. We're watching the same movie, but we're seeing two different movies. So the people that hate Trump, especially because we didn't have cameras in there so that we could see sort of first person what was occurring. So we have to listen to it through a third person party, what was said. That makes the movie even more separated. You could see it right now. I'm looking at some of the lefties that I follow on X, people that I've debated and stuff before, and they're just like, this was the most open and shut case I've ever seen. It was clear that Trump was guilty. Literally the easiest case ever. So my perspective, I'm looking at this is like, this is one of the most corrupt cases I've ever seen. I cannot believe that any reasonable person can find him guilty. Here's a litany of reasons why. And this person's not saying, well, there were some shady things, but I think that he was more likely than not guilty. He's saying the exact opposite. This is the easiest case ever. Easiest case ever. I don't know. What was the justification for Judge Merchant not giving the jury instructions to read? He's like, no, you can't have them. You have to come back to me and I'll orally give them to you again. I don't know. There's a lot of crazy shit. No, fuck, I forgot about that's bummer news. I forgot. I learned that last night. The EOD got booted off Twitch. I will reach out to him. That blows. I hope he's still streaming somewhere. And we'll try to do a show with him and see what we could do to help out. That sucks. EOD is a good friend of the show. He's a great guy. Apparently he got booted off Twitch. Hopefully he gets his channel back. Andrew's debating Dave Smith soon? That's great. Yeah, EOD is another great guy. So yeah, we're seeing this two movies. And, I go back to, I remember, I won't mention his name, but a left-wing friend I have that I think Tom knows. When the 302 of Flynn came out, so for those of you, most of you will probably know this story, especially if you follow me for a while. Michael Flynn was the incoming national security advisor of Trump. So Trump wins the election in November, right, of 2016. But there's this lame duck period, right, where Obama's still there until Trump's sworn in, I think January 20th is the swearing in. So in that period between the election in November and January 20th, you know that Trump's going to be the president, but he's not officially the president. So he's got, his cabinet that he's picked and whatever. And what happens in almost every administration is that administration is getting to work. So they're laying the groundwork for what they're going to do. They might be meeting with the transition team from Obama's team. They might be meeting with diplomats and other countries, etc. This is commonplace, and it's actually good practice, even if it's an administration you don't like. For example, the Biden administration did this coming in from Trump. That is what I want an incoming administration to do. I don't want them to have no access and then walk in day one and be like, what are we doing here? So that's what you expect. So Mike Flynn was the incoming national security advisor. And long story short, Joe Biden personally came up with the idea, sitting in the office with Obama, to charge Flynn with Logan Act violations or to investigate him. Now, the Logan Act's this archaic law that says that if you are a civilian or if you're not a member of the executive or whatever, you can't be speaking on behalf of the U.S. government to hostile foreign powers. And this was because, they were worried about people conspiring with Britain. So some senator in, North Carolina is conspiring with the British Crown. They were worried about that sort of stuff. But it's never been used to prosecute anyone, and it's not even brought up, whatever. So the normal state of affairs is going on. They decide that they're going to ambush Flynn with the Logan Act. The other thing that's important for this story, before I get to what I'm talking about here, is understand this, that I've made this point I don't know how many times. Tom just brought it up. Why weren't there cameras in the courthouse? Here's an even better question. Why doesn't the FBI videotape their interviews? I could do it with this. You could do it. Every American basically has access to a video recording device. But our FBI, for some reason, chooses not to use video or audio when conducting their interviews. Instead, they have what's called a 302. And the 302 is their official transcription of what happened. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to transcribe something, and keep in mind, these aren't court stenographers, these are FBI agents. But it's not exactly the easiest thing to get word for word what was said, let alone things like tone, etc. So you could miss things, you could miss a tone in just writing and recording that. You could also be corrupt, and you could lie about what was said. Who's to say differently? You or the person you're accusing. There's no video. There's no audio. Nonetheless, so now we get to the story. Mike Flynn was accused of treason, basically, violating the Logan Act. He was discussing sanctions with Kislyak, the German counterpart, or the Russian counterpart to him. And that's what he was doing. And oh my goodness, it was a big deal. It's terrible. It's treasonous behavior. A bunch of my friends on the left said, okay, treasonous behavior. Sure, fine, great, grand. Let's see it. We never knew exactly what was said. And eventually they released the 302. So now we have the FBI's official version of what was said. So I remember the day it came out. My office was downstairs at the time. I was like, oh, Flynn's 302 released. I was all excited to read it. It's like 6 pages or something, if I remember. And I start reading it, and they're like, the whole thing was he lied. He lied to them. So they ask him, like, did you talk to Kislyak about sanctions? I'm way shortening this. And he's like, I don't remember. And they're like, blah, 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 blah. Did you talk to him about this? And he's like, I don't know. I don't remember. Blah, 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 blah. Did you talk to him about this? And then his third answer is, I don't remember. I guess I could have. Now, I know that from watching, I don't know how many trials and how many congressional testimonies, I've heard people say over and over and over, I don't recall. I don't recall. I don't recall. And never have they been charged with lying. Because apparently, and I've talked to people like Pisco that said that the lie is clearly he did remember. That's the lie. You get that? Imagine if someone says, hey, David, what'd you have for breakfast? And you say, I don't remember. That's a lie. Clearly you remember. Did you have eggs for breakfast, David? I guess I could have. I don't remember. That's a lie. You remember. So anyways, I read this 302 and I was like, holy shit, this is insane. This is why they went after this guy for years? Even after the prosecution dropped the case, the judge refused to allow it to be dropped? For this? Forcing Trump to pardon him? My friend called. Did you see the 302? And then my friend's a Trump hater. I was like, yeah? I couldn't believe it. He's like, I know, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, treason. I was like, wait, what? He's like, it's the worst thing. I can't believe it. It was worse than I expected. I was like, what? What are you talking about? It said nothing. It completely exonerates him. Oh my God, this is treason. I can't believe it. The man should be in prison. That's the two movies. We're literally, this isn't a video that we're watching that maybe you could say, well, the mood's open to interpretation. Initials TH. Now, in fairness, the person called me for things unrelated to this, and they just happened to come up in the conversation because we don't really call each other to discuss. But I just remember thinking, my God, if we can't agree with what these words on the page say, what chance is there? And since then, we've had the same thing. Trump says, go be peaceful. Half of the country's like, clearly that means be violent. That's half the country, roughly. At least half the voters. How do you coexist in that society? Hash it out. I try. That's why I debate. It doesn't matter. That's how I end up with debates like Pisco, where he says when Trump says be peaceful, he means be violent. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at this Jamal Bowman thing. You say that lying to law enforcement's a serious crime. Yes, and we should charge it. Absolutely, we should charge it. And you also agree that Jamal Bowman absolutely intended for that alarm to go off when he pulled it. Yes. Okay, well, Jamal Bowman told the law enforcement officer that he did not intend for the alarm to go off when he pulled it. So by your own justification, that is one, a lie, and second, something that should be prosecuted. They chose not to prosecute him. How do you defend that? What was his answer? I believe when Jamal Bowman said he didn't intend for the alarm to go off, what he really meant was he did intend for the alarm to go off. That's his answer. He just meant the local alarm, not the... So when he said no, what he meant to say was yes, but only the local alarm. I didn't intend for the alarms elsewhere to go off. He literally will look at language and say it means the exact opposite. And every time to benefit himself. So that's the type of person he is. So when you're looking, you didn't get to see the trial of Trump. Neither did I, neither did Pisco, right? We saw people on X or people on television that were allowed to see the trial or were talking to people that were allowed to see the trial give their opinion. Thanks so much, Viceroy. I appreciate it. Thanks for the 2 subs. So it's like fifth hand. It's like, remember that game Telephone? Where you whisper something in someone's ear and that goes through the chain and you see what comes out at the end, right? I'm getting my information from someone who's interviewing someone who interviewed someone who sat in the court. That's the information I'm getting because we weren't allowed to have cameras there. We couldn't see for ourselves. Now, like I said, I think Jonathan Turley's a good source of this. OK earlier said, when I said Jonathan Turley's biased, he said Turley's not biased. That's not true. Every single human being is biased. All you could do is hope to check your bias as much as possible to be objective. Doesn't matter if the court stenographer will be released at some point. How many people will read the full transcription? 1. Second, how late will it be when it comes out? And third, a stenographer doesn't capture the entirety of what's going on there. Right, yeah, Doghouse gets it, right. But still, that's better than nothing, don't get me wrong. I'll be interested to read a lot of this. But I feel the thrust of it's come through in what people have said. How's he biased in matters of law? Because he's going to have a certain political bent and he's going to have a certain sort of constitutional philosophy that's going to impact the way he looks at things. He would admit it. There's no way Jonathan Turley wouldn't say he doesn't have a bias. He'd say, of course I have a bias. Maybe I'm a strict, my bias is strict interpretation of the written word of the Constitution. It's a bias. Going into this case, he has voiced his frustration before the case even began that the case was even brought. So that, when evaluating the case, if you're going into it thinking this is a sham case that should have never been brought before you even start looking into it, that's a bias. Now, does that bias affect your reporting? Hopefully you do his best possible job to not leave that bias affect your reporting of what's going on. But there's certainly a bias. Gotta drink my water. Just seeing if anyone had any hot takes. I know I don't have to say this again, but I will. Please, 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 to all of my audience or anyone that you people may talk to, don't lose your fucking head over this. There are going to be feds out there saying, oh, now's the time to refresh the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants. Tell those people to pound sand. They're trying to get you locked up. They're hoping, and maybe they're helping facilitate, like the Whitmer planning, that some unhinged lunatic does something so they could say, see, this Trump guy does need locked up. Look what his family's doing. Pisco won't debate the Her report with me. He knows better. Has he tweeted yet about the reading to his ghostwriter? Has he tweeted about that? Nope, still hasn't got that. He's still reading into it. He's very quick to comment quite conclusively anytime there's a story that's critical of Trump, but he's still getting around to it. False electors aren't a smoking gun against Trump for various reasons. One, false electors have been used in the past, such as Hawaii. Second, they were suggested to be used in the 2016 election. And from that Time magazine article that talked about a shadowy cabal fortifying the election. They talked specifically in it how they weren't going to accept the results of the electors, and these were the sorts of things that they were planning. It is not illegal to plan the false electors. False electors, had they been accepted, wouldn't have led to Donald Trump being president for life or anything stupid like that. It would have kicked it to the Supreme Court, which then the court would have had to have looked at the evidence of election malfeasance, which is what Trump's team was ultimately trying to do, because Trump's team sincerely believed that there was evidence in some states of things that went wrong electorally or things that went wrong with ballots, etc., that cost him the election. And he felt he wasn't getting a fair shake, which he wasn't. As we're seeing now in Georgia, that there was a case that we're still ongoing looking at where they admit in the recount in just one county, and that recount, 4,000 ballots were counted twice. Thank you, Hispanic. I really appreciate it. They're also saying that there's some 300,000 ballots in Georgia that they don't have the electronic scans or whatever for. None of this has ever been looked at thoroughly. They just did a recount, but they didn't do the types of audits that you would do if you thought there was some sort of corruption. Now, that doesn't mean Trump was right. It doesn't mean that Pence, I understand Pence's position and why he signed off on the electors. But the idea that this was like, oh, they were lying electors. I actually saw Rakita Law debate Destiny on this, where Rakita was... Good luck, Rakita. I hope you're doing all right. Rakita was saying, like, the problem is lying is not illegal. It has to be lying that gets you some sort of gain. So it's some material lie, right? So, for example, if I run as the elector here and I say, I'm the swimming champion of Pennsylvania, that's a lie, but that doesn't really mean that it's illegal to say that in terms of me running to be an elector or a delegate or whatever, right? And so... there was no confusion. Pence and everyone else knew who the real, quote, electors were and who the false ones were, right? That's it. Pence was within his rights to accept whichever slate that he wanted. The fact that he didn't further proves that there was no harm done with this. So what was the harm? What did the alternate electors do? What's the actual harm that was caused? Mike Pence looked at it and said, that's it. Well, what was the potential harm? Well, Mike Pence could have looked at it and said, sure, I accept the alternate electors. That's within their rights. They're allowed to do that. The idea that this is somehow subterfuge, like in Arizona, they're charging the alternate electors. They literally put out a press briefing announcing that they were alternate electors. So the idea that there was some sort of subterfuge is nonsensical. Why is it when the Democrats do this stuff, like, for example, when they refuse to accept electors, whatever, that wasn't considered election denying? When they did that in the 2004 election, 2016 election. He's not guilty. He's guilty because he's Donald Trump and he's in a left-wing area and the judge was corrupt and the prosecutor's corrupt and the jury's a left-wing jury. And Orange Man bad. That's why he's guilty. The facts of the underlying case are nonsensical. I've talked about it many times, but I'll talk about it in general here. The underlying case is as follows. There had to be some crime that was committed. And then in order to commit that crime, there was a cover-up of falsifying business documents in order to commit that crime. The initial crime that would have been committed, which basically would have been tax fraud or would have been campaign finance violations, the statute of limitations has ran out on. So you can't charge him for that. However, what they could do is say, because he covered it up, they could now extend it to a felony and charge him for the cover-up. Not for the initial crime, but for the cover-up. So that's what he's being charged for. He's being accused of paying for a campaign expenditure, but not recording it as a campaign expenditure in his financial disclosures. That's what the accusation is. The truth is he didn't use campaign money. His lawyer, Michael Cohen, paid Stormy Daniels. So what actually happened, and I'll admit this is my bias, but it seems what happened was Stormy Daniels was an extortionist that knew because Trump was running for office, now was her chance to say, hey, I'll tell everyone you cheated on your wife and had sex with me unless you pay me some money. That's extortion. That's what she did. If this would have happened to Hillary Clinton, people would have said that's grotesque. She's a strong woman. How dare we be looking into her sex life, etc. It was consensual sex. However, because it's Donald Trump, this was considered some horrible, heinous crime. And Stormy Daniels, who had allegedly, in her words, sometimes she says she didn't have sex with him, sometimes she says she does, but in her words, she was a willing participant in a sexual act, right? And then extorted Donald Trump. So he paid this extortion is the argument. Now it looks throughout the trial like what happened was Trump was barely aware of this, that it was actually his attorney, Michael Cohen, that set up this whole arrangement and went through, what was it, the National Enquirer, and this guy, I think, who ironically his last name's Pecker, good stuff, where they decided that they were going to have an arrangement where they would do sort of catch stories and then bury them or promote stories that were beneficial of Trump. Now, this was said in the trial like it was some sort of nefarious action, but it actually occurs all the time. For example, we know that there are media outlets that routinely work with Democratic candidates to bury stories that are critical of them or to promote stories that are actually beneficial to them or critical of their opponents. So this is something that happens quite frequently, and it is not against the law. You could work as a candidate with Fox News to say, hey, I want you to boost me up and I want you to denigrate my opponent, push this story. That's not illegal. In fact, we see all the time the Biden administration is constantly putting out, hey, we want the press to talk more about this. Is that illegal for him to be doing that? No. So you might say it's unethical or shady. I don't really know about any of that, but it's not an illegal action. But this was the arrangement that they had, and so that they were going to pay Stormy Daniel to cover up this story, right? That was the crime. That's allegedly the crime that occurred. In the process of this, Michael Cohen, who has lied over and over and been charged with perjury and lied many times in this trial, he is claiming two things simultaneously. One, that Trump knew every penny that was spent, and that's why even though there's no specific conversation that we have anywhere except the word of Michael Cohen saying Trump said, yeah, go ahead and pay her, or discussing the details of this, we're told, well, obviously Trump would have known because he's so meticulous with his money. While simultaneously, Michael Cohen admits that he stole $60,000 for Donald Trump because he overpaid Stormy Daniels and kept $60,000 for himself, which is a crime. That is theft. Now, Alvin Bragg decided that this prosecutor was a prosecutor that decided on running on the promise of taking down Donald Trump. The felony of stealing $60,000 is far more serious than anything Trump's accused of. For inexplicable reasons, though, Alvin Bragg chooses not to prosecute the more serious crime, and not only that, doesn't even civilly force Michael Cohen to give the $60,000 back to Trump. So imagine someone steals $60,000 from you, and the prosecutor says, guess what? We're going to allow that guy to keep the $60,000 they stole from you. We're not going to charge him, and instead, we're going to have that guy talk to us how you're a piece of garbage and charge you with a crime. That's in effect what's going on. So if Trump was so meticulously keeping track of his money, how come he didn't know that Michael Cohen stole $60,000? Then we had other witnesses that testified that said, no, Cohen's full of shit. This conversation didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. The judge repeatedly excoriated that person, sent the jury out, yelled at him for making faces at the judge. Now, the underlying crime itself of a campaign finance violation, there's disputes on exactly what this law means. In fact, it's heavily debated, which is probably a reason that you would want someone who is a professional who is involved with prosecuting these laws or writing these laws to come speak to what the interpretation of the law actually is. However, the judge denied Trump's right to do that. Okay, that's important to know. My reading of it and understanding is this. The way this is normally prosecuted is something is a campaign expenditure if it is something that you spent money on that if you were not running for office, you elsewise wouldn't have. In other words, if I get a haircut, theoretically, I'm getting a haircut because I'm going to a campaign event. So is that a campaign expenditure? Well, no, because I get haircuts even when I'm not running for office. See? Right? However, the prosecution's theory seemed to be something as follows. If Trump paid for anything that could have benefited him and his campaign, then that's a campaign expenditure. So Alvin Bragg would say, yes, your haircut is a campaign expenditure. And if you don't pay for it with campaign funds and then write down and record you spent campaign funds to get your haircut, then you have committed a campaign finance violation and you have falsified records to cover it up. That's the interpretation of the law of Alvin Bragg. So any haircut you buy, any suit you purchase, etc., these are all things that could be interpreted as helping benefit your campaign. Now, the reason this matters is this, because the fundamental question is Donald Trump the kind of guy that would have paid for a non-disclosure agreement for a woman that he allegedly had sex with if he wasn't running for office? The answer is quite simply yes. He's probably done so many times in the past. We see people that are similar to him that are wealthy businessmen do so quite frequently. In fact, there's actually a congressional slush fund that was used for paying off women who probably had to sign NDAs of numerous members of Congress, right? So the idea that you signed an NDA with someone who was trying to extort you and they're arguing that this was the sole purpose of influencing the election seems to be nonsensical. That's why Bragg seems to change the definition of it doesn't have to be for the purpose of affecting the election. All we have to argue is that it in part would have helped you in the election, and therefore we could say it's a campaign expenditure. Now, brief sidebar to this. When I'm talking to Trump haters like a friend of mine, Connor, who's a so-called Republican and conservative, who doesn't like Donald Trump, and he was saying Trump was clearly guilty of this crime in a debate I had with him like 3 weeks ago, I said, what's the crime that he's clearly guilty of? And he said, you can't pay hoes that you slept with campaign money. That was his interpretation. I said, Connor, they're literally charging him for the exact opposite. They're charging him because he used his personal money. They're saying, no, you had to use campaign money and disclose it. That just goes to show you, as I said, and I've done videos on this, that they were going to find Trump guilty of this crime no matter what. Had Trump used campaign monies, Alvin Bragg would have argued, that's not a campaign expenditure. So you illegally used campaign money to purchase something that was for your personal benefit, not for the campaign, and therefore that's fraudulent, that's a campaign finance violation. It'd be very similar to if I'm getting donations for my campaign, and then I go out and buy a Corvette. And I say, no, trust me, the Corvette's for the campaign. They would say, no, you can't do that. You can't. That's what they would say. So they were going to charge Trump either way. And even Trump haters, they're like, clearly he committed a crime. They have no clue what the crime is. None. Connor thought the crime was he used campaign money to pay off a hoe. It was the exact opposite. Yes, all illegitimate. That's right. They all have to do with the falsification of business records. But it's only a crime if that falsification is in the attacks of concealing an underlying crime, which there is no evidence of an underlying crime. Nor is there any evidence other than the word of Michael Cohen that Trump ordered this. For example, if Trump didn't order it and his lawyers just went off on their own and did this, Trump's not guilty, the lawyers are. So one, you have to prove that there was an underlying crime that was committed. Now, the judge did something that was very unique, and you may have heard about this, right? The judge in jury instructions, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second, right? So, all throughout this trial, the judge was, according to Jonathan Turley, who I was listening to, extremely forgiving of the prosecution, to the point where he left Stormy Daniels on the witness stand make an ass of herself, talking about whether or not Trump used condoms, telling jokes, like a stand-up comedy routine, etc. Let it all go. Then, when Trump's team would bring witnesses that would say, this is a lie, Cohen is lying, etc., he was incredibly harsh and kept accepting objections, was what was found to occur over and over and over. This occurred. He wouldn't allow Trump's team to submit expert witnesses that would talk about the underlying crimes. Because remember, the underlying crime had to have been committed, even if the statute of limitations ran out, in order for the crime of forging business records to apply. That's the truth. That's what had to occur. Now, we already talked about Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor. I can't remember the guy's name now. I'm sorry, it's slipping me, right? But the third in line at the DOJ quit his job at the DOJ. Okay, whatever. Maybe he's going off to greener pastures. To people's shock, he ends up being one of the prosecutors on this case. Now, the Biden team has said over and over, hey, Biden's DOJ had nothing to do with this. They're not weighing in on it. This is just an independent action, whatever. It's just completely coincidence that this guy that was at the DOJ under Merrick Garland leaves, and then he's one of the dudes that's there prosecuting Trump. A complete coincidence. We could see that Merchan's daughter worked intimately with the very Democratic people and parties that would be benefited from this sort of trial. Didn't matter. Michael Cohen himself, the star witness who everything hinges upon, who is a serial liar, right? Imagine thinking there's no reasonable doubt. You had to believe Michael Cohen. You had to. You had to believe Michael Cohen to vote guilty, who's been convicted of perjury, who admitted that it's his entire financial life at this point to attack Donald Trump. That's how he makes a living, right? Who admitted to stealing $60,000 from Trump in this very transaction. And you're like, nah, I don't think there's reasonable doubt. Absolutely 100% he's telling the truth about everything, right? Thank you so much, Tengo. But Cohen, it turns out that there is a Democratic senator who, before he was a senator,